Hello, everyone. So we are going to be talking about the warm up and cool down. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what is a warm up. A warm up generally consists of gradual increase in intensity of a physical activity. And last week we did our heart zones activity, and you got to identify that how your heart rate goes up during activity. So you should be able to identify with a pulse raiser being a warm up. Also, it will include joint mobility, stretching, and then you'll have the activity following the warm up. Now, for cooling down, is also known as like limbering down or warming down. You might hear those terms. It's basically an easy exercise that's done after your intense activity, and it allows the body just to kind of cool down, have your heart rate return to a resting or close to resting heart rate, which is really important for your health. All right. And we're going to move on to the next thing. So, why should we warm up? Well, there's a couple reasons why we should warm up. The first is that it increases our performance. So, when you have the blood flowing to our muscles are able to perform, right? So, without blood, our muscles don't get oxygen, and they will not be able to do the task that we are asking it to do. So it goes along with it increases the heart rate and blood flow. We just talked about that. Also, it minimizes the risk of injury, and this is a big one. Is when you warm up, you're trying to prevent injury. So when your muscle groups are ready to perform a task, then then you have a less chance of injury happening. And then we also talked about how the oxygen gets to your muscles, and that helps with their performance. So now cooling down. Cooling down is where your heart rate is elevated, and we want to return it to a resting or close to resting heart rate. So some of the dangers with cooling down too fast or not cooling down at all is that it can result in dizziness and possibly fainting. And that's because your heart rate is still very fast. And if you go to a complete stop, it can cause those types of things of like dizziness and fainting. So we want to make sure that we do a cool down after intense activity. So our warm-up's the same for all activities. This is really important because if you do a warm-up that is meant for a different activity, you may end up risking injury. All right. So the answer is no. You want to make sure you're warming up the muscle groups involved in the activity. So an example of this would be like if you were warming up for a bike ride versus warming up for playing a tennis match. So warming up for a bike ride, you probably would focus more on warming up your lower body, legs, and back, just because that's what you're going to be using to propel yourself. As well, and then for like playing tennis, like a lot of the time, yes, you do use your legs, but majority of where injuries happen is to the shoulder and arm area. So warming up the shoulders and arms for playing tennis. So those are two different types of warm-ups you would do for those two different activities. And that's going to be it for our warm-up and cool down.